Because sometimes when we get to some of those places where you talked about with stress, we feel pretty isolated, we feel alone. And that can lead to some other things, can increase our depression and those types of things as well. And so having that empathy, having those relationships, growing those relationships really can help us kind of navigate and create kind of a balance with some of these things that we're, the stress.
Okay, everybody, we are live. Thank you for joining us. My name is Clay Olson, and we're just excited for you to join our first ever Impact Suite Wellness Series live stream. And today, here with me, I've got Sean Morris, and he is, among many things, he's a
many things, yes, many things.
clinician. He is a substance abuse professional, and he's a member of our executive leadership team here at Impact Suite. So we're excited to have him. We're going to be talking about stress, rethinking stress from friend to foe, rethinking and transforming stress. And excited to dig into this topic because this is a topic that I think everybody watching can relate to on a very personal level.
Oh, yeah.
The vast majority of Americans deal with stress regularly, that feel stressed in the workplace, feel stressed at home. The news doesn't help, and COVID did us no favors on this. And people are feeling more stressed than they did a few years back. So, very relevant topic, very relevant conversation to have. We're excited to have you guys participate in this. If you have questions along the way, as we're diving through some of the material that Sean has prepared, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll be able to address those at the end of this conversation. So, Sean,
excellent.
Let's talk about stress.
Let's do, yeah. Well, thank you for kind of helping us get started here. That all of us experience stress. So if you're dealing with some stress, you're not alone. So is your neighbor. So is your friend. We're all dealing with stress, and certainly you shared a few reasons as to why. And we're hearing and we're seeing that stress is continuing to be just have a huge impact in our society and create all kinds of challenges for us on so many levels. So yeah, we're going to talk about stress today, and we're going to, as you can see, it says rethinking stress. So we're going to approach stress in a way a little different than kind of what we typically do when we talk about stress. And hey, here's some tips, and we're going to give some of those for sure. But we're also going to talk about, it's how we look at stress. And
I guess that's the question. Like, is stress inherently bad?
No. It's not inherently bad.
Well, let's talk about
we
that.
think about it that way, though. We often, and matter of fact, to that point, I don't know that anybody hears the word stress and doesn't automatically think of that as a negative, right? Yeah. But stress by itself, it doesn't have to be a negative.
And then we'll get into that. But I just want to put that out there for everybody because, again, we often think of it as like something to run away from, to squash, and any level of stress in your life is a negative. And that's not necessarily the case, and maybe it's reshaping the way we think about that. So.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're exactly right, and it really is. It's reshaping how we think about it, so that when we think about these, and you can see here on the screen here, as we talk about a stressor. Okay, what is that triggering event? What's that thing that is something that is going on, or something that's coming up that we're kind of like, oh man, I'm worried about that, or how I'm feeling about that. What is that triggering event? And we've got plenty of those. Those are happening every day.
Yeah, I mean, they're happening for everybody. Everyone can think of something in their own life. For me right now, my wife's about to have our fourth child. Any day now, and that's of course brings a lot of stress, a lot of excitement, and a lot of joy, but a lot of stress in that natural trigger.
Well, but I know you're having your fourth daughter, and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So
I have added stresses that come along with that, like all girls.
Yeah. So I don't know what we can do on that. That's a whole nother presentation. But so yeah, we've got these stressors. As you just mentioned, example from your own life, and then what is our response to that? Our physiological. So stress creates a lot of different things for us. Obviously we hear sometimes, I have a little bit of a stress headache. Sometimes we feel it in our gut. We just feel maybe depleted, maybe we feel tired, some of those different things. Maybe we feel energized, maybe we feel excited, maybe we feel a different kind of experience with that. And then how do we, and that's essentially it, is how do we perceive that feeling that we have? Are we perceiving that in a way to say, hey, you know what? this is okay. I've got this, and I'm capable of whatever this different this event is, and I'm going to be able to be extremely successful with this. Or, do we see it in a real negative way? And that's what we'll talk about here. On this next, on this slide here, it really kind of plays out what goes on as we talk about stress. And I actually like to look at it and work backwards. So if we look at distress, for example, that's the negative side. That's the thing that all of us are wanting to avoid. And when we feel that distress, man, that's really challenging and creates a lot of difficult impacts in our life. But as we kind of work our way back, okay, well, if I'm feeling distress, how am I interpreting different things? Certainly, and we're interpreting things all the way through this process here. But as we have that physiological body, the response that our body has, well, we're probably feeling some discomfort, some pain, like, oh, I don't like feeling this way, and we just see that as a real problem to how we're doing. And then certainly that self-concept. Our self-concept would be in a distress state of mind would be like, oh, I don't think I have the skills for this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. We just feel like, you know what? I think I'm already defeated before we get there to whatever that triggering event is. Of course, the stressor. So. On the complete opposite side of that, again, if we look at that eustress, the eustress, and by the way, eustress means positive stress, which,
Well, so walk through some of that. Give some examples of what positive stress, how would that manifest?
Well, I don't know if we can say, hey, here is something that is a positive stressor, because that could be different for everybody. Any single stressor or a triggering event, all of us are going to look at that differently. Some of us might look at the same thing in a real positive way, and others may look at that in a negative way. But just along the lines of the question you're asking, it's exactly that. It's how are we interpreting that experience? What's our approach to it? What is our ability and our belief within ourselves that, hey, I can do this? What's that hopeful, excited feeling when we feel those kind of emotions within us? Or is it, hey, you know what? This is okay. These are emotions of excitement. These are emotions of energy.
So, like, maybe before you get up on stage to give a performance, or before something potentially very positive could occur, the stresses are going to come along with that because of the significance of that moment or the pressure of that moment. But that can lead to positive. But there are some events in your life that don't have this kind of light at the end of the tunnel where you're holding a medal or a trophy, but rather something that is challenging, like a demotion maybe at work, or being laid off, or something in your home where you're not sure you're going to be able to pay the bills that are coming. Like, but you're saying even those challenging situations that aren't necessarily your moment to shine, but rather difficulties and challenges that just are a natural part of life, that you can take those moments and reshape them and rethink them to where you are capable of handling that situation, and out of that, I mean, would you say that you could even turn that into a stressful situation where it can motivate you to make changes and pivots in your life that might be ultimately far more valuable and beneficial? Or from those challenges that come your way. It's almost like the analogy that maybe many of our listeners have heard, but this idea of a boat sitting on calm water never reaches their destination. It requires that wind and the turbulence of the waters to really push them toward the destination or the promised land, or whatever you want to call it. So, but it requires that discomfort of these. We all want to sit on calm water, but we need that wind and turbulence a little bit in our lives to propel us towards something that we otherwise wouldn't be able to achieve. Would you say is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, yeah, I mean, anything that we are going through, any of those triggering events, along the lines of some of the examples you shared, a demotion or losing a job or any of those types of things. As difficult as those things are, we certainly can look then is what is our concept of this situation? How do we see ourselves? How do we believe in ourselves with the ability to overcome this challenge? And really seeing it as that, is say, hey, you know what? Yep, I've got a challenge here in front of me, and what am I going to do with that challenge? And am I capable? Do I have the support around me? Do I believe in myself that I can overcome this? And with that ability or that belief that, hey, I can overcome this, and taking that energy that our body is kind of building within us and cultivating that into a positive way to say, hey, that's gonna, rather than kind of feeling like, oh, I just, I'm a failure, but rather saying, hey, you know what? I've been successful and I'm gonna continue to be successful, and I've got some opportunities ahead of me. It's gonna require some work and some energy, and I'm gonna use this energy to move that forward, but I can build that, and then we can fill that energy in a positive sense.
So I want to stick with this for 2 seconds longer, and just say that someone might hear this and they think, well, what if I don't feel that way? I don't feel like I'm capable. I don't feel like, and that's where a lot of the stress kind of compounds, and we just fall into a pit of despair of like, this is too much, like too many things happening all at once, and I'm not prepared to handle the weather ahead. And so they might hear what you're saying and think, well, that's just positive thinking. You're just saying positive, like think positive and say like, I'm good enough, I'm strong enough, and doggone it, people like me, kind of a thing, right? Is that what you're saying, or I mean, clearly that's a part of it, is the mindset piece. But is there more to it than just simply changing your attitude, which can feel a little, well, in some cases, impossible to people, and two, feel a little patronizing to the situation maybe they might feel. What would you say to somebody that's kind of feeling, well, that's it, just tell myself that I can do this, and then that's the solution? Is it deeper than that?
Well, there is a lot to how we communicate with ourselves. So I don't want to downplay that, because it's really important, the messages that we tell ourselves. And so, creating a mindset that, hey, you know what, I am able to do this, or I can be successful here, or I can overcome this challenge. That's an important thing. The other part, is, there are, so many challenges that we're experiencing. And sometimes, what number of challenges are we going to identify today or at the current moment? But really recognizing and having, this ability to say, hey, I'm going to focus in one area at a time. And I'm going to kind of look at this particular situation, let the other things kind of go for a second, and look at this one area that I can, find those opportunities to improve and be able to work my way through. And talking with people, engaging with other people, using the support of others can really be a really helpful way to, the relationships we have are so key to our happiness as well. And those relationships can really help be able to move us through some of those difficult and stressful things that we're experiencing.
I love that. And last point on this, and I know you have more you want to cover, but last point on this is I think a big part of this is also recognizing we can sometimes get bogged down by the 2 or 3 challenges that we're facing at a given time, but we forget to look up or witness all of the beautiful things that are happening in our lives, or the blessings, or the positives in our life that we sometimes kind of, at any given moment we might be dealing with a few challenges and we have 1,000 things to be super grateful for, but we rarely give those the time and attention. And a good friend of mine, Chris, who just started an organization called Points of Light, talks about this. He talks about how sometimes when we feel like in the pit of darkness, that we need to like adjust our eyes as we would at nighttime in a nighttime situation, and notice all the specks of light, points of light as he refers to them, that are basically like things in our past and in our current moment that really are things to just be profoundly positive about. And that light, those little points of light, the stars in the sky, can illuminate and kind of change our perspective of the darkness that we're within, and see the beauty around us. So I love that framing from Points of Light, and shout out to him and all the good work he's doing. But I think that mindset, coming back to your point, is so critical, and to help change it, rather than just like on a dime saying just think positive. I think to do that effectively, we need to recognize how many things we can look at in our lives that just really start to change our perspective of, okay, maybe things aren't as dire as I am perceiving them to be right now. Things in this part of my life and this part of my life are actually going quite well. And if all else fails, I still got this, and the most important things are in place. I think that can start to like change your perspective of a simple challenge at work or something at home.
Yeah.
That's helped me and others. But anyway, continue.
Well, let me just share along those lines. You maybe kind of think of I love to watch athletes and how they perform because they're under a lot of stress. They're being watched and under the microscope. Particularly professional athletes. When you look at a quarterback who can lead his team to on a final drive in the waning seconds of a game to win that game and come from behind. You look at an NBA player who can stand at a free throw line and hit those two shots one after another.
Yeah, that's why I never played pro.
They might be down by one. He's got to hit both shots for them to win, and no time remaining on the clock, that sort of thing. A baseball player who's up at bat. So any of those ways that we kind of look at that. But what I'm familiar with those athletes reading and hearing as they talk about, sure, they've gone through a lot of different things and they've got those stressors, right, as we're talking about. And I certainly sometimes see those athletes, those basketball players at the free throw line, and I think, oh man, I can't imagine being in that position. But they thrive for that position. They look forward to it, and they've had so many opportunities and this belief in themselves that I'm going to succeed here. And yeah, there's opportunities that, what if I miss? But they don't think about what if I miss. They're thinking, I'm going to make this. Yeah. And I've made it thousands of times before, where that belief system is with them. And then, and then different from probably an average everyday game where, hey, they're just kind of in a state of calm, as it kind of shows there in that. But rather, when it's kind of maybe the NBA Finals or something like that, where there's a lot more pressure on this particular shot, this particular free throw, and yet they feel that I can do this, I will do this, I will succeed. And they also talk about how they then get in the zone of they're in that moment. They're not distracted by all the different hecklers that are out there waving signs or banners or whatever they're trying to do, trying to distract them, even other opposing players walking up and kind of tapping them or saying something to them as they're approaching the free throw stripe. They are in that moment, and they are believing in themselves in that moment. And I think that's so much, for us is to say, you know what, there's a lot of things out there. Let's, look at the positive. Let's look at and believe in self-talk in a way that says, hey, I can do this. I'm capable of this, and then also be able to be in that moment. And sometimes we have to separate, as we said, there might be a lot of things, but we might have to just focus on one thing and be in that moment at that particular time.
Good, I like it.
So, and that kind of goes back now into some of those different discussions we've just been having. That is, do we look at that stressor as, is it a threat to us or is it an opportunity? And when we can see it as, hey, this is an opportunity, has so much of a power for us in how we go forward, in whatever it is we're doing. And again, even those hardships, when we see it as a, hey, this is unfortunate. This is too bad this happened. But there is a great opportunity ahead of me. And I may not even be able to see what that opportunity is yet, but I believe enough within myself that I'm going to be able to make something out of this bad situation and turn it into something great. So
beautiful.
And then, of course, do we look at these different events? Do we see them in a way of, this provides excitement and energy, as we've been talking about, or does this create that fear for us? Again, going to kind of that just little example I was just sharing about the professional athlete, they see excitement, they see success, they see celebration of making the shot, winning the game, that sort of thing. And all of those thoughts of fear that, unfortunately, our mind can quickly go there. And so we do have to really train ourselves and sometimes stop ourselves to get to a different place of thinking, but to really be, to work through that fear so that we're not looking at it from a fear mindset, but rather looking at it from a growth mindset and seeing opportunity. With whatever that stress is, seeing that, hey, this is going to be great, and this is going to be an opportunity that I'm going to do this I'm going to speak in front of these people, and it's going to provide great information to this group, and it's also going to give me other opportunities to do other speaking engagements if that's something somebody was interested in.
I think a relevant scenario that people are that often feel is they feel, that their plates are very full today. We live in a society that really praises being busy, and we're probably more busy today than we've ever been, perhaps ever, with regard to like the things that
Maybe.
are. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. I guess when I say busy, I mean the thing that we overbook our schedules with stuff and things to accomplish. Maybe that's we've added more leisure things within that schedule than maybe our ancestors years ago. But nonetheless, it's just kind of like a lot going on, and people feel a lot of weight on their shoulders with regard to like the number of things that need to get done, particularly in a work setting, and the things that are actually getting done. Or at home, my wife would say the same: the things that need to get done, but the things that are actually getting done, and that can feel really heavy. So I love the discussion around these opportunities to kind of like these stressful opportunities where they're around giving a presentation or this moment to shine for individuals. But I think the stress that people are feeling most, that is bothering people most today, is the stress that is like isn't necessarily the moment to shine in a praising way, but rather just like, I can't get this done, and if I don't get this done, these consequences will follow. And so how would you speak to somebody that feels that level of stress? It's not kind of like my big moment, but rather, if I don't do this, I won't have any moments.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of made the comment, I think we might be busier than we've ever been before. And unfortunately, unless we really recognize that and make some changes, we're probably just going to keep building upon that. The conveniences of the world that we live in today, the technology, all those sort of things allow us to be busier, right?
Rather than less busy, it actually has been the reverse.
Yeah. So we're constantly bombarded with stuff. There's information overload. Information's coming in all the time. We're carrying devices around with us, which are constantly, reminding us of things we need to do, or a new bit of information's coming in, encouraging us to do something. And so, we're even having to kind of remind ourselves to take a break, or remind ourselves to, go out and enjoy the evening, or exercise. We're having to build that in. Because there's so much. And so some of that too is just, getting away from some of it. Sometimes we need to put some of these things aside. We need to say, you know what, I can't do any more at the present time. I might, I want to get to that, and I'm going to get to that, but I have to kind of say, you know what, I don't have time for that right now. We might even have to have discussions around that within, work settings or within personal engagements or relationships. And then also just looking at, what are we doing with our leisure time? Do we have any leisure time? As a therapist, I've talked a lot to people about, what do they do for fun? What do they do to relax? What are their hobbies? And oftentimes when people are under a lot of stress, they
Those
can't
go out the
list
window.
those things. They're out the window and been out the window for years in many respects. So because we don't have that, and sometimes when we look in our lives or look at our lives, we're like, you know what, gosh, I have filled everything with something, and not necessarily stuff that, wow, I love this, I enjoy this. It's just stuff to keep me busy or to keep me moving forward or try to get us achieving something. A little side note here, I was in a conversation with a neighbor last night about, just even raising our kids and helping them be able to be successful, but not overwhelmed and burdened. And, even youth athletics, and I can kind of go back to the comment you made of, are we busy or are we not? Youth athletics used to be a lot for fun. Now, youth athletics is about competition and is about
at a very young age.
And that's what this neighbor was saying, because she has very young kids, and she says, do I have to get them into comp sports at elementary ages for them to be able
Unfortunately,
to
that's where we're at
participate
today.
in junior high and high school? And that's exactly right. And so, you look at those things and think, you know what, yeah, you used to be able to go and have fun and have a few of these type of, games or practices. Now it's a constant. And so sometimes we have to take a step back and maybe, maybe more than sometimes, maybe often we have to take a step back and say, you know what do I really want? What really provides me with the happiness, the peace that I'm looking for, and how do I cultivate, my life and my surroundings, both within work and in my home life, to really be able to give me the time and those relationships the time to really be able to achieve what we're after. So, and then and we've reconsidering capacity, and this goes back, Clay, to kind of what you were mentioning about, is it kind of the simplistic thing of just kind of rethinking or how we're thinking about something, and as much as we want to say that's kind of a simple practice, it's a tough practice, because we can train our minds to think on the positive, but unfortunately our minds more often and quickly go to the negative. And so it really does take training to get ourselves to be in that mindset that says, hey, I'm going to succeed here, and be able to say, you know what, hey, this is rough, but I've got the ability to come through it and be successful. So sometimes we have to step away and kind of practice that until it becomes something that we really can believe in and within ourselves. Sometimes we need the support of others to really be able to engage in those kinds of relationships so that we can hear from them. Because sometimes it's harder to believe that in ourselves, and yet we need the support of others to kind of start to cultivate a little bit more of that belief. So.
I like on this slide it says, rather than thinking, this stressful assignment is going to kill me, maybe we should reframe it. I'm not going to be great at this yet, but I can improve. I'm going to learn a lot from dealing with this. What's the benefit from these challenges that we face? And we can all look at experiences in the past where we weren't fully equipped or educated or informed on a particular assignment or project, and through that we were able to gain that very thing to which that we were able to leverage in the future. And so remembering that this is a long game rather than just these short challenges that we face.
Yeah, that's great. Here are certainly, some 6 tips that help us with all of this. That, aside from kind of the things we've been talking about, just some things to kind of be mindful of as we go about this. And the first one is to savor. And when I think of savor, I think of, putting a sucker in my mouth, and, am I really savoring the sweetness of that, of that flavor of that candy, and really enjoying that? And so that's the same with our lives. Our lives are so busy, and there's plenty of things, and tomorrow is probably going to be busier than today in many respects. But are we really taking the time to really be in that moment and really savor what that moment is? Those opportunities that we have to be engaging with a friend, be engaging with a partner, be able to, be in that place to say, hey, I'm really enjoying this activity. Going to an activity and really having a wonderful experience there, not worrying about what you left behind, not worrying about what I got to get to next, but really being able to be in that moment and savor and take all that in. That's important, because the more we can do those kinds of things, it can help kind of alleviate some of the pressures we feel elsewhere. If we're always feeling pressure, it's tough. But when we can have a little bit of balance or a little bit of freedom from those pressures and be like, you know what, for these 2 hours, I'm going to really enjoy this play that I'm attending and really just soak it all in and enjoy the moment, can be really powerful. Another one is to thank.
Gratitude.
Gratitude, yeah. Telling people thank you, genuinely. We often, pass and say, hey, thanks, kind of thing. But to take it even one step further and really share appreciation for someone.
So what does that do for stress?
Well, it lowers stress as we are thinking about and taking the thought process towards other people and separating it from thinking about ourselves. When we can think about helping other people or engaging with other people, that can really help us to alleviate our stress. So it's a powerful thing there. The thank piece, actually, by doing that actually increases, studies have shown that increases happiness by 25%. So again, gratitude. The more we can have gratitude, whether it be for the things that are kind of around us and see different experiences and be grateful for them. That's kind of a mind shift as we've been talking about, but have that mind shift of gratitude. And to be able to really appreciate other people and see the good and let them know of that can just do wonders.
Yeah, that's a really interesting 25% reduction in stress.
Increase in happiness.
Sorry, increase in happiness through expressing that gratitude. I think that an unintended byproduct of gratitude is that as you're expressing that gratitude outwardly, that immediately draws attention toward you, positive attention toward you from those individuals that you're expressing gratitude toward, which then builds your support system, builds your kind of like team. If you're feeling alone, if you're feeling that nobody's there to support you, or there in your corner, or nobody's even aware of your struggles, expressing gratitude can really turn that around, because people all of a sudden say, hey, thank you, and how are you doing? Yeah. And what's going on in your life? Well, how can I help? So that's not the reason someone might express gratitude, but that might be a reason why that 25% increase in happiness exists, is due to that reality.
Well, let's go over here to this one that says empathize, and just along what you're saying is, as we connect with other people and show appreciation for other people and have empathy for them, that in turn gets brought back to us. And those relationships then are really able to be strengthened and developed. And that also, I mean, the secret to living a happy, fulfilled life is relationships, as we've found through many different studies that have been done. So the more we can have empathy and appreciation of others, the more that is going to in turn come back to us, and those relationships will be so impactful to help us. And and sometimes when we're under a lot of stress, that very thing that we need is those people who understand and who can support us and who have empathy for where we're at, and who can be either a sounding board or be somebody who's kind of cheering us on, encouraging us, checking in with us, those types of things. Because sometimes when we get to some of those places where you talked about with stress, we feel pretty isolated, we feel alone. And that can lead to some other things, can increase our depression and those types of things as well. And so having that empathy, having those relationships, growing those relationships, really can help us kind of navigate and create kind of a balance with some of these things that we're, the stress that we've been talking about. I'll give as another, giving acts of kindness, thinking about ways to help, strengthen, support others.
And serve
others. We often, when we're in a pretty difficult place with our stress, we are often focused a lot on what's going on with us, what our internal experience is. And the more that we can look outside of that, again, we have to, sometimes that takes some practice to say, hey, I've got to right now engage in a way to connect with others. I've got to create ways to be helpful to others, give kindness to others, serve others. That can help us get out of that place of thinking about what we're going through and really be able to contribute to something to somebody else. And by doing that, giving acts of kindness, serving other people, going kind of to what we talked about there with the thank piece, that can increase happiness by 42%. By doing that.
Serving others.
Again, serving others, thinking of ways that we can help and benefit the lives of others is powerful. Aspire is all about being hopeful. And when we are in these difficult places, we need those, having that optimism, being optimistic, saying, hey, I can do this.
This is where I am. This is where I'd like to be. This is what I'm aiming for.
Yep, and I can get there.
There.
Not just, though, that's where I want to be. It's, hey, I can get to that place. Having that hope. And that hope is one of the things that, again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, stress and depression really kind of, are very much hand in hand and kind of, one leads to the other, so on and so forth. But having hope is that thing that can really help kind of keep the depression aside and not have that really start to come in and be a part of the stress that we're experiencing as well. So hope is critical, and hope is, or optimism is a magnet to other people. People like being around other people that are hopeful, that are excited, that have energy, that are positive about life. We want to surround ourselves with those individuals, and that again speaks to the building of relationships and that sort of thing.
Real quick on the hope, I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of individuals over the years that have maybe attempted to take their life or been in very dark situations where they felt like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And in that very acute moment of life, they can't see what is 10 years down the road, or even 5, or even 2 weeks down the road sometimes. But in every case, as I've spoken with these individuals, sometimes years after those moments of absolute despair and giving up, they are so grateful that they didn't fall through, or that they were still around, because their life looks so much different. And we just forget that time, life is a marathon, as I mentioned. Like, time is such a healer, and there's so much hope, and there's so much good down the road. And even if we can't see it today, there's so many opportunities that come our way, and the people that will find us to build us up. And so when I talk to somebody now that is in that state, sometimes I just want to kind of hug them and grab them and say, like, things will get better, and they know that deep down, but they don't give it enough attention in those moments of absolute darkness.
Yeah. You're exactly right, and unfortunately, we and not everyone, but certainly a lot of people find themselves in those places where all I can see is right now, and right now is not great, and I don't feel a whole lot of excitement or hope or thoughts going forward. I just see that right now is a really difficult place. And so, and really, I mean, we could talk through every single one of these steps that we're talking about right now as a way to kind of rethink that difficult place that a person might be in. But again, those relationships are so key, that support. And, again, we have a tendency that when we're in those places to withdraw from others, and certainly, the things we need to do is be reaching out to others, and at the same time have others be reaching out to us when they know that we're in a difficult place. But, sometimes we don't know that. A lot of the stuff, that these struggles and these challenges that we face, a lot of these are just things that we're dealing with. They're internal. And sometimes people would say, gosh, I never even knew. And that's where, the more that we can kind of engage in these things, where we can be, looking for ways to encourage, be supportive, serving others, where we can, be hopeful and look for opportunities. And when we're in that really difficult place, and that really, even if we're in a dark place, where we can incorporate these activities into our lives and give it a shot, and say, you know what, I'm gonna talk to somebody about how I'm feeling. I'm going to, I'm going to share a few things of thanks and appreciation that I really have appreciated of somebody else. I'm going to go give some service and give some kindness to somebody else. And I know I'm not in a place right now that feels natural for me, but I'm going to kind of push myself in that direction. And that through those activities, I know that right now is tough, but I have hope for what is to come. And I can't see it today.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful that it's going to be better than where I am today.
Yeah.
And then Revive, and Revive's, an important piece along all of those things as well. The eat, breathe, move, sleep types of stuff that you often like to talk about.
Yeah, talk about that with it. Like, that's self-care, right? Like
self-care.
When people aren't doing super well, and they're like, why am I not, doing well? Why am I stressed? Why am I, it's oftentimes that they're not kind of paying attention to these 4 core aspects of daily living. You want to talk about eat, breathe, move, sleep briefly? Well,
some of them certainly go without needing a whole lot of discussion, but those, we've got to take care of ourselves. And life becomes so busy that sometimes these basic things get forgotten. We don't even have time for
Well,
them.
and the literature is really clear on some of these details that our nutrition, our eating behaviors, and what we're putting into our body have a huge influence on our overall well-being and our mental health. Our our access to sunlight, our access to moving and exercising and getting our heart rate up. These are kind of basics, like you're mentioning, but it's something that we, as a society, are woefully neglecting. And so we often tell people, as they're like, well, I'm not in a good place. We thought, well, let's go through the list: eat, breathe, move, sleep. Yeah. And what have you been eating lately? Well, I've been traveling a lot. I've been eating a lot of processed foods. Okay, well, there's something. Yeah. What have you been? Have you been detaching and breathing? Whether that takes the form of meditation or prayer or just going on a hike in nature. Are you able to detach from the hustle and bustle and the constant, relentless pulse of work life and online entertainment and social media? And so are we detaching to kind of ground ourselves? Move? Are we exercising? Are we getting our heart rate up? Are we allowing our body movement to help diffuse the stresses? Because a lot of people, when they get stressed, they go out and work out. It works. Or they go on a run, or they go on a bike ride, or a swim. These things really help navigate those issues. And then, of course, sleep, which studies are showing more and more just how pivotal sleep is. And oftentimes we know studies are showing that we don't get enough sleep as a society, and the sleep we do get isn't as restful as it ought to be. And so if we look at those, there's usually a discrepancy. There's usually kind of an area of vulnerability. And as we fill those gaps and improve in those areas and kind of make that solid ground we can stand upon, we are far more capable of addressing and dealing with the challenges that come our way, which are natural and a part of everyday life. They're part of life. And so we can't avoid them altogether. Stresses, as you said in the beginning, we can't avoid them, but we can position ourselves to be less vulnerable to be knocked down by the stress that comes our way.
Yeah. Yep. Very well said. So we look at eat, breathe, move, sleep, and making sure that we're engaging in those things. And again, taking that energy that we have, as we kind of talked about a little bit ago, and sometimes that energy, we need to kind of get up and move. We need to go out, go for a nice walk or a run, or kind of release that energy in a positive way. Even just getting up and moving. There's plenty of studies that show that just taking 5 minutes every hour, every 2 hours, and just getting up and moving and walking around allows you to be that much more focused and attentive to the activity.
Yeah. How many of you are doing that now? Many of us don't. We just kind of get in a tunnel vision. 5 hours later, we're like, I should stand up now.
Yeah. So getting up, moving a little bit, all that sort of stuff just does does wonders for us. And then breathing. Breathing is a simple thing that we take for granted. We do all day long.
But not
thousands and thousands of times, but not consciously. And when we can really just, again, as you said, step away for a moment, get grounded with ourselves, take in some deep breaths. Just even the simple act of doing that can even just take a few seconds, and just kind of really kind of get back into, into the moment, into thinking of some positive things, take in some of those deep breaths, and look forward with hope.
Some people might be familiar with some of the material that we provided within our apps, and we often talk about one of our tactics, our methods is something we call STAR, and it's just a way to remember to step back, take a few conscious breaths, ask yourself what you really want, and respond in a healthy way. And it really just slows down the decision-making process to kind of anchor you in that navigating and breathing through those issues, rather than just going with the flow and being taken by the current of the default mode. So. Yeah. So, okay. So we have Christian right here. Is that what we want to? Is there an experience where either of you have applied these principles and improved a stressful circumstance in your life? And that's coming from Christian. So what would you say to that?
Oh, I was going to say, you got to go first on that one.
Well, I mean, where I have applied these principles and moved in a stressful circumstance in my life. Yes, I can absolutely think of one. I've shared this with some people, but there was a time in my life where I was absolutely at my wits' end. I felt like the world is crumbling around me, and I couldn't sleep. I was struggling, and I remember at 2 a.m. Getting up because I couldn't sleep, and I just went on a walk. Again, I was kind of just needing to get grounded and get out into the peaceful outdoors. It was a summertime walk, and so I was on the streets. Nobody was there, and I was just meditating and contemplating and thinking through the situation I was faced with, and I remember one moment looking up, and this is a little corny, but I looked up at the mountains, which I find a lot of solace and beauty and sacred ground in the mountains. I think it's a beautiful area, and I looked up at the mountains, and they were just glowing and majestic in the moonlight. And I remember thinking, well, with whatever I'm dealing with, at least the mountains are still beautiful, and they have been, they will be, and they are now, and they will be in the future. And it just kind of reminded me of how maybe insignificant and small that moment was, and how grand the world around us is, and how beautiful it is. And so that helped me kind of get control of that particular situation in my life. And I returned home, slept, and got up with a kind of a rejuvenated perspective on what I was facing, and I was able to deal with it. And so I have since done, there are other experiences, but that was one that came to my mind. Anything for you?
Yeah. Gosh, there's a number of them actually that I could touch on, but I'll maybe share this in the fact that I had gone through a time where I found myself in a really difficult place. A little bit of obviously not. We touched on some of this, and we could go into a lot of details there. But I really had to engage in these things that we have talked about. I really had to reevaluate kind of the circumstances that I was in, the stress that I was facing. I had to, and I relied heavily on other people. I was talking with others and engaging with others frequently, and really trying to approach my situation from some of the recommendations and the encouragement of others, because I was having a hard time being able to see that within myself.
So for you, you didn't bottle it up. You reached out and connected with allies, trusted individuals that you could share that burden with you and walk through that with you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and along the same, I've found that when I get up and I'm moving and I'm exercising some and getting outside by itself does wonders, and certainly I appreciate being out under the sun versus underneath a fluorescent light. So yeah, those things do a lot.
I've got another one here. This is from an anonymous attendee that says, "How do I handle stress when it comes from something I can't change, like illness?" I think that's a great question, because there are many stressors in our life that maybe that we have control over. An environmental situation, a friendship or a relationship that's toxic, or things that we have the capacity to maybe make pivots or adjustments and changes. But there are also many stresses or stressors that come into our lives that are something that we have to just deal with, like an illness. What would you say to that?
Well, those situations, as many situations, are really tough. And I think of different examples that we have in our lives of individuals who, although they were in very difficult circumstances, they found ways to make what they could out of their circumstances and approach things in a way that, again, going back to some of the things we talked about, they saw their situation and how difficult that was, but rather than focusing on how difficult their situation is, they looked at ways that they could be helpful to others. And so, they shared things with other people. They still tried to take the circumstances as they were and make the best out of the situation, which again, there are times, I think you would still need to have those moments to go, you know what, this is tough. This is something I can't believe what I'm having to go through. But at the same time, being able to say, okay, but it is what it is. Now what can I do with it, and how can I make a difference?
I've heard people dealing with addiction, particularly addiction that is secretive and private, and not wanting that to get out, and not wanting others to be aware of that struggle, and they've referred to this, and I'll relate it to this question that came up, but they've talked about one of the steps in really kind of getting toward healing and recovery is to make friends with the worst case scenario. And at first I was kind of like, well, that's terrible. That's kind of like, that's looking, rather than aspiring, rather than looking up to where you want to be, it's like, that's saying like, okay, if everything crumbles, like making friends with that. But as I've thought about that more, I understand that to reflect this perspective of, look, things are going to be okay even if this occurs. Even if this person that I need to share this information with is going to respond poorly, and maybe even if these things, like in order for me to be healthy, I need to kind of deal with this. So in relation to something like an illness in your life, like understanding that there is a lot of potential hardships with that, and some realities that are less favorable than other realities or outcomes. And kind of making friends with, like, whatever happens, but I'm going to, let's go back to my friend Chris, who's creator of the Points of Light narrative of, let's go back to like recognizing all the good that surrounds me. Yes, I'm dealing with this illness, and there are certain realities that I cannot change with regard to that detail. Like, that is what it is. But this illness has caused me to have a different perspective on my day-to-day life. My priorities have completely started to shift, and my emphasis and focus and energy is going toward things that really matter, as opposed to maybe things that mattered less prior. I am starting to really reach out and tell people what how I feel about them, not because I think that my days are numbered. That is not necessarily the case for all people, but because of, like, it really kind of helps you recognize the fragility of life and recognize, okay, let me make every moment count. Let me have every relationship matter. And so I think that there are ways to deal with those challenges that come our way that can result in beautiful outcomes, regardless of the outcome of that thing you can't control. Like that you cannot control, but what you can control is the way you live your life and the way you connect with others and how you handle those things. So not an easy situation, and I think whoever asked that question, maybe that's a personal situation you're dealing with, and I think that's I would hope that that perspective could help in navigating that. I think we have time for 0 more. Let's do one more and then we'll conclude. So do you have anything to say about stress in marriage specifically?
I have lots of things to say about stress in marriage. I guess to be able to answer that question, I would need to understand a little bit more of what is the stress related with marriage. Marriage, by itself, the joining of two different individuals is stressful. And then trying to navigate, now you're looking at life not only from your own perspective, but from somebody else's perspective as well, and trying to figure out how do we kind of create togetherness, and how do we kind of navigate through differing opinions, and there's so many different things that
that's
go
an
into
entire
marriage. There's a whole
live stream we could do
kinds
on
of
that,
things.
right?
So I don't know if I can even easily answer the question, because there's so much that could go into that, but certainly communication is huge in marriage, is really being able to communicate with your partner, and then really being able to and also have a sense of humor and give your partner the benefit of the doubt, and be able to work through.
I think that's perfect, Sean. I think you said it well, and I would also just take it back to the list that we provided earlier on addressing stresses. If we are more grateful and share that gratitude toward our partner, if we are more giving and serving toward them, if we're savoring the beauty around us, and if we're aspiring toward something and working toward that, improved relationship and communication. All those things apply to improving that relationship, and I think that the more we can focus and deliberately in building that, the better the outcomes of that relationship will be. So thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate it. We love having and talking to him and digging into that wealth of knowledge that you've accumulated over your many years. You're 35, right? So of your 35 years of life. So thank you.
They can see by the white hair that I'm a day or two
a little
older
than
than 35.
that. Okay. Well, again, thank you guys so much. The next episode for this live stream, this Impact Suite Wellness Series, is going to be next month, and we're going to be talking about turning from addiction, what to do when we want things that hurt us. I think that's a challenging topic or a conversation, and I think that those that are dealing with that or have partners or close individuals in their life that are dealing with that can relate with that to a level that sometimes we crave the very thing that's kind of like tearing us down. We're going to talk about that in detail, so join us next month. We'll send that out shortly. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.